The second fight is going to be Pedro Munhoz taking on Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez is a very interesting prospect, and in his most recent fights against Frankie Edgar, he's got the knockout with the knee that a lot of us remember. He's also had a really awesome spinning back fist, followed up by elbows against Baccarel Dana. He used to be called as Dana Baccarel, if I do remember correctly. Now he's Baccarel Dana, and I still don't think I'm getting that correct. It's really difficult to get these pronunciations correct when it seems like they're changing from every fight to fight, but that's just me. I digress. He got the split decision win over Felipe Colares, and then another decision win over Andre Ewell. The Cody Durden fight, I don't remember exactly why that ended up being taken off the record there, but Cody Durden, he fought him, and he looked good in that fight as well. So Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, I've really been a fan of him for a little bit now, and I like his style. I like how he likes to mix up the leg kicks with going to the ground. He is one of those styles that's pressing forward and throwing a lot of crazy stuff at you. As the fight goes on, as it gets into like the middle of the second and the third round, that's when you can start to see Chris Gutierrez fall off just a little bit because of the kind of the amount of stamina and endurance that it takes to continue fighting at his pace. But when you got a guy like Pedro Munhoz, the young Punisher, not so young anymore, coming off a couple losses, coming off of that eye poke with Sean O'Malley, that could be said one way or another, where he actually got poked in the eye, whether he was I think he got punched in his left eye and then he got poked in his right eye, but the poke in his right eye was almost like a straight hand poke, so it wasn't the worst one we've ever seen, let's just put it that way. And then he was closing his other eye. He was talking about how he couldn't see, and maybe he could, maybe he couldn't, but then he was in interviews with the wrong eye closed. It just got all very confusing, and then he was saying that the camera angle was flipped on an interview to make it look like it was the opposite eye. It just got very confusing as far as what eye got poked, what eye had a knuckle in it. Was there an eye poke at all? Was Munhoz, trying to get out of that O'Malley fight without too much, pressure, damage, what have you. So a lot of stuff. So, Pedro Munhoz's back is going to be up against the wall, 19-7 at 36 years old, at 135 pounds. The younger you are, or I should say, the lighter you are, the earlier your career seems to come to a close. So at 36 years old, that's like being 38, 39 years old in the 55 pound division. And, it just kind of gets a little older after that. So Pedro Munhoz is definitely going to have his back up against the wall here. He's a guy who, can use his grappling to keep the fight standing and has good boxing combinations, and will also throw those low leg kicks, but you're not going to see a ton of head kicks out of him. You maybe see a couple kicks to the body or some teep kicks, but nothing too crazy out of Pedro Munhoz in terms of the lower half. And then, like I said, he uses his grappling to kind of feed into that offense, and he's been able to, have successful grappling and get those grappling wins in the past. But I think against a guy like Chris Gutierrez, who's going to be younger, who's going to be faster, who's probably hitting harder at this point in his career too. He's going to be the bigger guy here, coming in at 5'9" with a 67-inch reach, as compared to Pedro Munhoz, who's 5'6". Now, Pedro Munhoz is used to being the shorter guy. Obviously, he's been 5'6" his entire life. At 135 pounds, that's not that bad, but 5'9" at 135 pounds, Chris Gutierrez is going to be a little bit bigger. He's going to have a little bit more range, especially with the legs. And like I talked about his leg kicks earlier, I think that's ultimately going to be a problem for Pedro Munhoz, who, I'm not saying he's necessarily looking for ways out of fights, but it did seem awfully like that with the O'Malley fight. And then, having the two performances, the loss to Dominic Cruz and the loss to Jose Aldo before that. It's not like they're schlubs, but, he does have the loss to Frankie Edgar not too long ago, and that still wasn't the best version of Frankie Edgar. He's got the win over Jimmy Rivera, who that's not a great win at this point looking backwards. So I think Pedro Munhoz's best days are behind him. I think Chris Gutierrez is in his best days, or they're shortly up in front of him. I like the stylistic matchup for Chris Gutierrez taking on Pedro Munhoz. He'll be able to use those longer legs, to use those leg kicks, which are more dynamic. I think he'll be able to keep out of the boxing range, but he's got good enough boxing range if it has to get there. And then when it comes to the ground, I think Chris Gutierrez can handle himself there. So I'm going Chris Gutierrez, El Guapo, to get it done over Pedro Munhoz. And looking at Tapology, they do agree with me. So that's definitely going to be the pick. And yeah, just want to say one more time, if you're out there and you're liking the videos, you're liking the picks, make sure you drop us a like on the video, subscribe, give us a comment, let us know what you think. Moving on up the card,